I went into my local Walmart tonight for a quick grocery trip to pick up some stuff I was low on. Quick in and out trip, 15 minutes at most. Sad to say it didn't end up being a fast trip because when I arrived at checkout, I was stuck behind a boomer who wanted to cause a scene. The guy in front of me was with his wife, who were arguing loudly about God knows what. They had a substantial amount of stuff on the belt, including a few large bottles of various alcohols. When the boomer scanned his way back to the bottles of alcohol, he froze and began searching around for an associate, who I presume he wanted to come and scan his ID. The problem was that he didn't scan any of the bottles. He just locked up and stared directly at a girl who was busy at the monitor for the self-checkout registers the next aisle over. After about 30 to 45 seconds of not scanning anything, he loudly shouted "excuse me" in his most condescending tone, followed by "can you come and scan my fucking ID please?" His tactic worked, as the employee in question immediately whipped around and walked over. He was doing the typical arms crossed bullshit, looking like everything was a giant inconvenience, and I will note, homie still hadn't scanned a single bottle of alcohol yet. When this young woman was in speaking range, the boomer began to lay into her. It makes me real sick to see workers just standing around when they're on the clock doing nothing when people like me have schedules to keep. "Can you do your fucking job please and scan my ID?" "Excuse me?" She responded. "You fucking heard me. Get off your goddamn phone and scan my card so I can get the hell out of here." Now, I would like to note a few things about this interaction up to this point. First, this individual was still in a work outfit. A mechanic's onesie for a local mom and pop tier company that I won't name here, but one in which I know the owner pretty well. He's a family friend. Second, he was still wearing his name tag, Eric. Somehow I hope you're competent enough to find your way here so you can see this story. Because of this, I knew how to address him. Eventually he asks the cashier very rudely if she's going to scan his ID and she flat out tells him no, I don't think so. Not after how you've treated me. You can talk with my manager. Good for her. She gets on a walkie and calls for a manager to come to the register the boomer was towering over and briskly walked off towards the customer service counter at the front of the store. The boomer starts loudly hollering about how this is all bullshit and he's just expressing his First Amendment rights. It was at this point where I actually found some balls and decided to give my opinion, unsolicited, just so this guy could get an outside perspective on how much of a jackass he was being. "Excuse me, but the First Amendment doesn't protect you from looking like a douchebag to random strangers in Walmart when you treat other people like shit." The guy wheeled around and locked eyes with me. "What did you just say to me?" I just smirked and said, "Oh, hard of hearing are we? I'm pretty sure you heard what I said." The guy visibly shook on the spot. "This isn't any of your fucking business, so butt out." I disagree. When I see someone acting like an asshole for no good reason, I make it a point to speak up. You seem to think that by stating that you have a First Amendment right means you can say whatever the hell you want without consequence, but that isn't how it works, sir. First Amendment protects you from government overreach for speaking your mind, but it doesn't protect you from the consequences you face from others for your words or your opinions. That's besides the point. I'm sick and fucking tired of these minorities doing nothing and getting a paycheck for it. He responded, rather loudly and unaware that there were quite a few people staring at this point. Hooray! Racism has entered the chat. The manager showed up, and he starts in on how he scanned his alcohol and that the associate in question was very rude to him and refused to serve him. He started stating that she told him he wouldn't get help because he was white when I interjected again. "Ma'am, that is not what happened. This gentleman didn't even scan any of his alcohol and immediately started shouting down at your employee, just for the sake of being upset. He was rude, unpleasant, and even made unnecessary racial comments. He wheeled around at me again and yelled 'shut the fuck up and mind your business,' before going on the tirade again. Something lazy workers, something First Amendment and speaking his mind. You know, this is very unfair of you." I started again. "You've put that poor girl in an unwinnable situation. Now that you've raised this untrue complaint, her manager is going to have words with her even though she hasn't done anything wrong. Does that sound fair to you, Eric?" I don't think he realized he was still in uniform, because he looked at me puzzled at how I knew his name. "How would you feel if someone came into your place of business and told John a bunch of bullshit about how you were treating them unfairly when you knew perfectly well that it was a lie? Or even better, how would your boss react if he knew you were acting like this while still in uniform with his place of business plastered all over your chest?" When he heard me say the name of his boss, he stopped cold. "Yes, Eric. I know John very well, and I think I might be paying him a visit tomorrow. That is unless you decide to apologize to that girl for being a lying prick instead." The guy then became very rushed and suddenly in a colossal hurry. He muttered something about people not minding their own business, to which I replied with "I'm just exp reassessing my First Amendment rights." SpongeBob's sarcastic voice and all. He scanned one of the bottles and had the manager scan his ID. His wife started in about how I better not show up to his office tomorrow. Something directed at me, but I wasn't paying her any attention and brushed her off. I was just staring at Eric and watching him bag. Eventually, he got all of his stuff put in his basket and he marched out, but he didn't apologize to the manager or the employee and gave me a hearty "go fuck yourself, asshole." As he flipped me off. I scanned my groceries and paid for my merchandise, but man was I smiling from ear to ear. Afterwards, I made it a point to go and speak with the manager and the employee in the customer service center. As expected, the manager was having a conversation with the employee about that customer, and she thanked me for speaking up. I've worked retail before, so I know what it's like having to deal with assholes like Eric. It'd be a cold day in hell before I let a boomer bully an employee then weasel his way into a victim role with management. Not on my fucking watch. So now my next play is to show up to this tire shop tomorrow. I really hope Eric is there. I hope he's the opener. I'm going to walk in and just smile at him. Ask to see his manager. Then I think I'm going to go in and just weave the nicest story about how he treated the employees at Walmart, so much so that I was compelled to stop in and tell his boss that he has a real winner on his hands, and that I'm a customer for life now. Maybe that way, he might get a message. Maybe, he will realize that I could have started a whole shitstorm for him, but I chose not to, because unlike him, I'm not a fucking dickhead. Oop, this is what bothered me most. Had he just scanned even a single bottle, he would have gotten what he wanted. Unless perhaps what he wanted was to just be angry at someone. Then he did get what he wanted. Update 1. Some of the reasons you gave were pretty telling. My favorite was when someone said something along the lines of "This is too well written to be true." What a world we live in where clear dictation automatically disqualifies a recounting of events from being accurate. I'll admit that it read closer to a novel than anything else, but that's just how I dictate, I guess. Anyways, onto the update. I arrived at the tire shop just a hair after 8 a.m. There was one gentleman in line at the counter when I arrived, but he was already being assisted by one of the associates manning the register. I took a look around and peeked my head in the back office area where I knew John typically worked when he wasn't being pulled into a bay. John wasn't there. As I walked towards the sitting area, I happened to ask an employee who was walking by if he knew when John would be in today. He told me John usually arrives a bit before 9 a.m. when he worked mornings, so I should just chill for a bit. I didn't have anything pressing to attend to today, so I did just that. As I moved towards a seat, I happened to glance outside at the working bays and noticed my old buddy Eric, who was currently walking towards the main building. When he saw me, I watched as his head drooped down and I could visibly see him mutter the word "fuck" under his breath. He stopped for just a second, shook his head, and continued walking towards the building. When he came inside, he set a packet with what I presume was a customer order on the counter and said something to the clerk at the register. He hesitated for a moment and walked over to where I was sitting. As he approached, I greeted him with "Morning, Eric," and smiled. He just stood over me for a moment before he took a chair across the coffee table that was sitting in front of me. Wonder what his next move was? Honestly, I didn't expect it, but the dude opened with "I owe you an apology." Color me shocked, I guess. Now, you see. At this point about a billion things began to run around in my head. Mostly, for some reason, the things that ran most prominently through my mind were all the calls for bloodshed that popped up in the last thread. All the claims that boomers can never learn and the only language they knew was bullying, which were thrown at me like mortars practically every step I took. Y'all were bloodthirsty last night and still were this morning, convinced that this gentleman was a drunkard asshat, but do drunk asshats apologize after doing something wrong? Back to the story. He continued on, saying that he didn't just owe me an apology, but also the cashier he yelled at last night, and how he had actually planned on returning to Walmart on his lunch break to see if she was working so he could apologize to her as well. In his words, "I've been dealing with a lot of personal shit in my life recently, including the loss of a loved one, and I took that out on y'all last night and it wasn't right." Right about this time is when I noticed that John had arrived. He walked in through the door behind where Eric and I were sitting and walked straight into the back area I checked before. We will get to that later. Guys, I honestly had no idea what to do. On one hand, yes, this dude was a raging douchebag to that girl last night, but this felt genuine. I mentioned several times in the first thread that I didn't want to react hastily, and this is exactly why. Had I gone in there and thrown a colossal fit and started a shitstorm, I don't know if this would have ended the same. Anyways, I don't wish to grandstand things further. The guy apologized, I stood up and shook his hand, and I simply told him be good to people for no reason, man. Kindness is free and isn't a sign of weakness. We chatted a bit and had a bit of a revelation that Eric and I have a distant connection neither of us really knew about. I won't disclose what or how we knew each other for personal reasons. Then John came out of the back office. He recognized me and gave me a hug. Asked what IW, as in for. I basically told him that I ran into Eric at the store last night and wanted to check in on him and get an update on an issue he was having there. That's when John said, "Yeah, Eric, I need to talk to you about that. I had a lady call me about something that happened at Walmart you were involved in." Oh shit. I'm guessing either the manager or the cashier called John after what happened last night. I guess the ball isn't in my court any longer. Eric gave a deep sigh and basically told John I was a shithead to a cashier last night because I was in a hurry. I wasn't thinking and it wasn't right. I'm gonna make it right at lunchtime. I hope she's working today. John then said something I didn't catch and him and Eric walked into the back room. That's it. End of story. I took a scrap from a notebook, jotted down my proof and snapped a photo, then jumped in my car and left. I do apologize if this left anyone feeling unfulfilled. I certainly hope that this brings you guys whatever closure you were looking for. I'm certain some of you aren't going to be happy with how this turned out, given how many pitchforks I saw last night. But after all this, all I can say is to not be so hasty when jumping to conclusions. People are people, y'all. You can't really be sure what someone is going through before you jump to judgment. Some folks don't know how to ask for forgiveness or don't know how to take responsibility for their actions, but some folks can. I'm glad this resolved itself the way it did. John knows what happened and knows that it happened with his business on full display, so he can now choose how he reacts with that information. I got the closure I needed, and I hope the cashier does too. Time will tell in that regard, I suppose. Be good to each other. Keep being kind. It's genuinely a real-life superpower. The universe rewards kindness in kind. But do drunk asshats apologize after doing something wrong? Now on to second story. Boyfriend mocked my meaningless children's book at a family event, and now he's ignoring me for supposedly being a bully. I am 35 female and he is 35 male and we've known each other 10 years and dated too. He knows how much I like writing books. I self-published a kid's book last month and he's been really quiet about it. This past weekend at my family cookout my father mentioned the book and how proud he is of me, but BF walked inside saying he was grabbing our drinks. At the end of the day my parents offered me some money to go to a book convention and BF audibly scoffed. On the way home I asked what his deal was and he said that his job, he's a back-end software engineer, will provide for us and he will let me have my fun as a creative for now, but I eventually have to grow up. I laughed because I assumed he was joking. He of course was upset and told me my meaningless book was objectively illustrated poetry. I shut down and he then was upset I was acting mad, so I changed the subject. He continued to make my book a topic by jokingly saying my glorified illustrated poetry shows my middle child syndrome or that I must crave mediocre attention from people. I shrugged and replied, hey, if you think you're mediocre, okay. And moved on. He texted me the next morning saying I tore him down and was being a bully. Nad, he was kidding with me and he hasn't at all responded to me since. Update 1. I am calling him Chris here. What a time to be alive. I broke up with Chris a few hours ago, boy howdy. He had ignored me for a full day and I hadn't reached out to him because I was honestly fed up with his attitude. We've been together for 2 years and I never have seen him act this way. I flip-flopped between maybe he was having a bad day or something was going on and he transferred his negative energy in my book, but no, he's just soggy moldy baby carrot that didn't think I had dreams of my own or I would throw it away for him. Our mutual friends have told me that he had basically told them that I rubbed my success in his face and made him feel like a simp just following his GF around being ignored when he has a successful business and has the higher paying job. He texted the day after his silent treatment that my not reaching out to him was a sign that I don't love him and went on to say that I love my book more than I love him because I neglected him while working on it, and then I didn't praise him at the party as my biggest supporter. The rest of his paragraph's long text went on to talk about that he had this whole plan that he would marry me and we would be engaged this year, but then you started not listening to me to drop things and focus on us, our lives and the future by taking up hobbies, and that my therapist poisoned me against him. I was diagnosed with depression this year and therapy has helped a lot. It hurt because I felt immediately like all I do was just rubbish to him. How the fuck can you say that? I loved him so much because he was someone I thought I would be with forever. Guess not. I got angry and was texting him to ask what makes you think I don't love you? I'd do anything for you. And just as I hit send his new message popped up and it said you wrote your book and you got your party. I assume now that I can finally have my GF back, we can have a talk. I don't think you understand how I want our marriage to be, so I want to make things clear. But then he responded to my message, are you kidding me? If you're not going to prioritize me over a book no one but you cares about, why am I even staying with you? I can go find a woman supports her man and wants his career and dreams to be successful. So I said alright. Go find her. We clearly don't work. Best of luck. Him, wait, are you breaking up with me? Me, what do you want me to do? You've made it clear I am not what you want anymore. Him, you can't just break up with me. Me, Chris, please. Him, you can't just make that decision for me. You can break us up like his. It's been 2 years, me 2 years in which one thing I wanted to do, one thing I was proud to have done, and you needed to shit on it. You've been so sour about it and I don't get it. So get your better woman. Him, but you can't just break up with me. We have to talk. He calls. I decline. Him, pick up. You are being ridiculous. He shows up at my door and the second I open it trying to push in, but I hadn't let the chain lock on. He was screaming at me. He said I can't break up with him. It's been 2 years. How do I think it will go for me to try dating again after passing the expiration date for children? That's when I asked him to leave or I would call the police. And he said he will never forgive me for this book as it's ruined me as a person, and for some reasons I said, Chris, take your mediocre stick out of you mediocre ass and be on your mediocre way. And called my parents to tell them what happened. My mom is over now plying me with a mixed drink and she's been making fun of the repeated you can't break up with me line as he said many times in text and bunch in person. She said she was proud because I am usually quite passive and she didn't like him bulldozing over me, and when I asked her what she meant she brought up a lot of things I never really thought about. Chris would shoot me down a lot and I honestly thought I was compromising for our relationship, but it seemed to some that I was just letting him speak for me a lot. 2 years. It feels like a blip in a lifetime at the same time. It's hitting me that it's over and my mom is staying over with me. But I have many WTFs to deal with, just not tonight. Edit/small update. Holy hell, this blew up. I am usually a Reddit lurker on anonymous mode, so I was overwhelmed in the best way to see all this live and support. It made me cry. Good years, I promise. I cried most of my bitter ones a bit last night on my mom's shoulder. She was right, I don't miss him but the version of him I thought he was. And so I choose to look forward. Mom and I stayed up and read comments together. She's not a Reddit gal but loved all your messages and says she's happy to be the Reddit mom. Lol, mom made breakfast this morning and we were eating when there was knock at the door. My mom held a hand up to halt me and got up herself to go to the door and ask who it was. Then I heard her say, you have 15 seconds to leave or you're going to be made to leave. I got up to see mom shouting though the still locked door peeking through my peephole. There was someone on the other side talking back to her but she just kept steadily counting down. By the time she got to 6, she had put her shoes on and was holding my broom. I'm not stupid, I knew it was him even then, but then my phone went off and I didn't reply. It was him again. He left flowers and an apology card, along with a stuffed owl bear. Mom asked me if I wanted to read the card and I said I did. It basically was a long-winded apology admitting he was being an ass but work has him stressed and he underappreciated in general and it all came out in a nasty way. He's so sorry. He should have given me space and respected me more and he will never do it again. He didn't sleep last night feeling so much regret over what he did and will do better. To please call. That he misses me and Mets not throw away 2 good years of foundation away over a stupid fight. I handed it to my mother who read it, snorting and chuckling yeah I bet to herself, and then stood up and went to the kitchen returning with a trash bag and my cell phone. What's the play, coach? She asked, and just to freak her out I took the phone and pretend to call the pizza shop. Yes, Domino's. We need a pizza. Yes, I'm breaking up with my ex and we need to toss his shit out. All that to say it's now evening. The sun is lower and my neighbors are watching my house as I am in my parents' pool in their backyard drinking margaritas with my sister and brother. Mom tells the story to all of them, over and over. I had texted him. Chris, we are done. All of the things you left at my place are in garbage bags on the porch. The neighbors have their camera pointed at the house, so please just take your stuff and go. Don't knock. I am not in. If it's all there on Monday, it goes with the rest of the garbage to the curb. He replied asking if not home, where was I? But I won't be giving energy to this. I will spend the weekend with my family and I feel so lucky to have them. I've decided that I will go for another book. Photos asking for links to this book already out, sorry, but when mom and I read the comments she said don't you dare put your name out there. They all seem lovely, but you don't know what others will do and I feel like if I did, it would be like opening the door to Chris like I did last night. You were right, that was dangerous. But if you are looking to do something nice, I would be absolutely overjoyed if you did one or both of 2 things. 1. Love yourself and truly know you deserve love and nothing less, and 2. Buy books from a locally owned bookstore / buy art from the artist / commission an art pace, etc. The art world is wonderful but also a struggle and many aren't as lucky as I am to have a strong support system. So support yourself and your local artist. Thank you all. Another edit, sorry there were a lot of same questions in the comments. 1. Yes, we were an interracial couple, I am black / indigenous / Middle Eastern. And he is Irish and French decent. 2. No, I do not want children. The moment I am eligible I will be getting that baby store shut down medically. I would adopt possibly someday but I would not and should not be pregnant. 3. Chris and I were friends before we started dating so I thought I knew him and his family well. 4. Mom has always been cordial with him even if she didn't care for him. She did the whole mama thing of hugging him, feeding him, etc. 5. Yes, mom will adopt you, she says she sends her heart to you in every hug. You deserve and more. 6. Dad didn't come over because, and I quote, you wouldn't have wanted me in a space that boy would also be in given what happened, so he stayed the course of his trip he was on. 7. I intend to be an author whether it be full-time or part-time. Oddly enough my book sales are skyrocketing a lot online. Oop, Lamau, that was honestly kind of the vibe. I was so upset and called my parents because I tell them everything. My mom was just like lock the doors and I will be there in 20 minutes and showed up with vodka and let me cry, but then I caught her smiling and was like WTF mom, and she admitted she was proud of me for dumping him. And glad she didn't have to go to jail because if I stayed with him after all that she would have to commit crimes. Lol. Loop, you know that if she doesn't like your partner, you really need to question that relationship. She's being so freaking smug after she reminded me that once she did speak up to me once I got mad at her. She's quoting a line from that animated Jackie Chan show Never Question Unclear at me Lamau. Oop, it's weird because he never hinted that I can recall that he was ever like this. We've got years of history, and I remember him being interested in things I liked and wanted to get involved in. Then my mom reminded me of my painting. I'm not a painter. Mom is. And a charity held a gallery event and the theme was something basic and I was visiting mom that week, and when I'm at hers and she's painting I sit with her and drink and we chat. But that day I was in a mood so mom struck up an easel next to hers and patted the seat and we painted side by side. She loved my pace and had it submitted for the gallery event. It was a huge event and Mom had a separate exhibit space, but my little basic painting was up an entryway with a handful of others and Mom pointed it out to Chris and he said it was good and we moved on, but at the end of the night Mom followed us out and suggested Chris and I might want to take a photo of us next to my painting. He said no, so Mom took a photo of me for me and shared it with herself. Chris asked me not to post the photo, saying it was a cry for attention and looked desperate and I was taking away from Mom's shine, so when my mom posted it he was mad at me. Why did I give my mom the photo? Why did she post it? But he suspiciously shared a photo Mom took of him at the same gallery, even shaking hands with a businessman we ran into, stating how proud she was of his work. The more I talk with my mom even now, the more she seemed to pick up on things. I feel bad, but when I asked why, she never said anything before. She said she had, but I had gotten angry at her. I can't even remember why.